I'm Kate Ward, and this is your Dickman Farms Smart Gardening Tip. And what are we looking at? We are looking at a garden, my garden, in October. And boy, is that one ugly garden. You are not going to see this on a television program, but you're going to see it on the computer. So anyways, but what am I looking at? I'm actually looking at a super productive year, but the end of it. And I'm actually prepping for next year. So as we see here, I've already dug nearly this entire row of what is potatoes. But being a sort of lazy gardener, here's what they looked like before I dug them. That is a line of weeds. So we have paths that are wide enough to mow, and then garden, mow, and then garden. And that has weed fabric on it. So you can see that black and no weeds. That's what you get. But potatoes, because they need to be hilled, I didn't weed. And because it's a long row, I was tired and I didn't want to do it. But what I do want to do is, before, you can see these seed heads on these, before they go to seed into my beautiful soil, because I do have to turn this soil to get the potatoes out, which is what's here, then I don't want that to go into my soil that I'm going to turn. And even though it looks pretty bad, once you start loosening it to get the potatoes, in my case, then you find that these weeds just pull right out. And again, being a lazy gardener, I threw them in the lawn. Why? Because those are nutrients. Despite the fact they're weeds, I don't care if there's weeds over there. And I'm going to mow them when we mow the lawn. By me, I mean Mike, my husband. And those nutrients are going to go back into the soil, so that there's no sense moving them. Now, if I had a compost, these could go in the compost pile. I don't want to compost them on top of my garden because there's weed seeds, hence I moved them over there. So things to think about. But what am I doing? Well, let me show you. And I have a couple of tools here. I'm, like I said, digging potatoes, so I have a fork. All right, this is a garden fork. 4 little tines, and for me, this is going to work. This is going to be a great tool to get out potatoes, carrots, any rooty vegetable. It'll pop onions that aren't very deep, and it helps work the soil. There are various arguments and discussions and ways of thinking about whether or not you should turn over soil, but in this case, I have to, because I need to get my potatoes out, which is fun because it's like digging for gold. You know, you look in here and all of a sudden, like, oh, potato, it's so fun to look like what looks like nothing, and then all of a sudden, boom, potatoes. So exciting. So that's wonderful. And as you can see, I loosened this weed as I did it, and now I can just pull these and wingo, off they go into the lawn. So then I'm going to set these aside. Now, if you have soil like mine, it's kind of dense. Doesn't drain really well, so I have to plant a little later than other folks, but I also means I don't work it. Again, lazy gardener, so I get little tiny carrots. This is, here's my finger, there's what it is. So it'll be nice and sweet, but it's tiny. Another thing that you work deep is spaces for carrots. So that said, I pulled out my potatoes, and now I have this hill. Well, I could do lots of things with this to get it ready, because I just grew this plant in here, which means the nutrients, or a bunch of them, are right in here. So what can I do this time of year? Well, I could go back and I can do a couple of things. I could add a nice compost in there and then work that in. Or I could actually use chipped leaves like this and work those back in. Once I have those worked in, then what I want to do from there, if I'm not planting anything in here in the fall, well, then I can use a hard rake like this one, and that's going to smooth that area, because I'm probably not going to put potatoes back in here. I want to rotate my crops, but I want to get it ready for that next crop. So I'm going to smooth it mostly after I added my compost or leaf matter, or both. And then finally, as a rough rake, I can go through with this leaf rake and really smooth it down. So that's one thing I could do to get ready for next spring. This is immediately available. This is going to break down over the winter, maybe feed some earthworms that are in here. Perfect. And I can do that in other spots in my garden too. But while I have you, here's something else I'm going to do. Not right here because it's not totally prepped. I'm going to put in garlic, because garlic is wonderful fall planted. Now, you saw that as something you get at the store. It looked like that. I just broke it apart. These are the actual garlic seeds, we're going to call it. So get rid of that. We don't need that. But you're looking for the biggest, fattest one. So this had only 4 cloves. So those are my 4 garlic seeds, but they're nice and big. And the bigger that clove, hey, guess what? The more energy for a new plant. So these are what I'm going to plant. And I plant them in the fall, and then I harvest them in June, July, somewhere around there. when the tops turn. That's a much better time. You get a lot better growth and hardening off. You don't get into the fall wet weather and that kind of thing when they're trying to harden off. So now's a great time. They're going to plant. There's your root end. There's where the top comes up. And you're going to plant those guys further down than that. But you know, maybe I only plant mine like yay far apart. But then, of course, you know, you could add some fertilizer in the bottom of the hole and we dig a nice little hole. But I don't plant my garlic very deep. So only about as deep as one plus another. So if I were to stack 2 garlics on top of one another, that's how deep I would plant it. And then I bury it. I give it a little loving pat. I write out where in the world I put it because I won't remember. So it comes up and I label my varieties. Now, where are you? So those are some wonderful things to do as you harvest the end of your garden. Maybe you don't have potatoes and carrots, just fine. But it's a great thing to get your garden ready for next spring. Get rid of those weeds, rotten weeds. And this has been your Dickman Farms Smart Gardening Tip. We'll see you soon.